Welcome to episode 38 of the Tax Professionals podcast. Nimesh Shah, current tax CEO of firm Blick Rothenberg, joins us for episode 3 of Tax Career Success Secrets, where high-achieving tax professionals share the secrets behind career success.
Welcome to the Tax Professionals podcast, the podcast dedicated to helping you improve your tax career. Here's your host, Jack Bonehill.
Nimesh said to me that he'd never aimed for promotion. That's not been his goal. He's also not driven by salary or title. So what does drive Nimesh? And how has he gone from tax senior manager to tax partner in less than 2 years and then to go on to become CEO? His answer may be unsurprising, but from the little time I had with Nimesh, 2 attributes really stood out to me. The first, I believe he has a kind and empathetic approach to working with others. The second, he clearly has a strong desire to do the right thing by clients, himself, his colleagues, and a strong desire to continually improve his skills. Every night on the train home, he would reread his sent emails to think how he could improve them. Once he told me this, it was no surprise that he progressed as quickly as he did, and this is one of the many gems he shared with us in this episode. The episode covers a review of Nimesh's career from about 2 minutes 50. After that, we move on to how Nimesh went from tax senior manager to partner to CEO without trying for promotion at around 19 minutes 30. At 30 minutes 30, we talk about how Nimesh started working smarter rather than harder. At 33 minutes 30, Nimesh shares the ironic reality when Nimesh started to properly delegate, which he wishes he did sooner, plus a discussion around delegation more generally. At roughly 39 minutes 30, he tells us an amazing way to improve your staff's confidence and a powerful piece of advice he received from a colleague which gave him the freedom to develop. At 45 minutes 30, Nimesh shares his advice that he would give to his younger self, knowing what he knows now. At 49 minutes, Nimesh shares his final tips to help you to improve your tax career. The timings just mentioned are detailed in the details section of the episode in your podcast player or in the show notes for this episode, which can be found at thetaxprofessionalspodcast.com/TTPP38. Make sure you don't miss out on any future episodes of the podcast by subscribing or signing up for email notifications at thetaxprofessionalspodcast.com/subscribe. Email notifications will give you a brief summary of each episode that you can decide if you want to listen. Episodes are bi-weekly and are released on Mondays. There's plenty more Tax Career Success Secrets episodes in the pipeline. Episode 1 was with Bill Dodwell, the current Director of the Office of Tax Simplification, and the second was with Peter Rainey, the current President of the CIOT. You can access these in your podcast player of choice or by heading on over to the show notes for this episode at thetaxprofessionalspodcast.com/TTPP38. Without further ado, let's get to it. Could you start off by telling us a little bit about you and your tax career?
Yeah, so I fell into the tax profession, I suppose, when I was 18. My sister looked through the university application book, so I'm sure some of your listeners won't understand about being online, but I had a book and looking through which university I wanted to go to, and my sister saw an advert there for a firm called Arthur Andersen, which is no longer with us anymore. It became Deloitte in the early 2000s, and it was the opportunity to do what they called a scholarship program, whereby I would go and work for a year before I went to university. I'd get a bursary every year that I was at university from Arthur Andersen, and I'd get almost a guaranteed job after university as well. And I didn't know what my sister was really doing, but she posted something away for me. I got an application form back in the post, which I had to fill in. Didn't really know what I was applying for, but I got asked to do an interview in Manchester. I used to live in Yorkshire when I was growing up, and it was great to go over to Manchester for the day, to the big city. Very underprepared for my interview when I went, and one of the questions I got asked was, do I know what an audit is? To which I said no, because I hadn't done my research clearly. And somehow they ended up offering me a position to join their scholarship program. I was one of 8 people in Manchester who were part of this program. And on my first day, which was actually a training course in Milton Keynes, I had no idea what I was signing up to or what I was doing, but I turned up in Milton Keynes with the other graduates actually that were joining the private client tax team at Anderson, then all from over the country. I think there's about 30 of them, some from Manchester, a large group from London. And I turned up partway through as an 18-year-old with no idea that I was about to embark on a career in personal tax. And that was my first ever experience the word tax as well. I really genuinely didn't know what I was signing up to. But very early on in my time at Anderson, I worked with some great people. I learned a huge amount. To have that experience as an 18-year-old and working with professionals, people who are in their mid-20s, 30s, just understanding the professional world. I had no exposure to it before. And I made some really great friends as well. I was sort of looking back, I was mentored really well by some of the people that I worked with, even though I didn't really know it at the time. But they really took me under their wing as, say, an 18-year-old, and people really looking out for me and caring for me at that age. I look back on that time, and that really shaped me quite a lot. And I think it helped me as well when I went to university, that I really respected the professional environment, work. Anderson was a fantastic business. It was always held out to be the best accountancy firm in the country, if not the world. At the time, it was the big five back then. And Anderson was always seemed to be streets ahead of their nearest competitor. And I was part of what was a fantastic organisation with fantastic people back then. And I look back on it now, it was probably one of the best jobs I ever had. And I still kept in touch with Anderson whilst at university. As part of the programme, I'd be invited back during summer holidays, Christmas holidays as well, which was great. Got a bit of extra pocket money. I'd get to go to Christmas parties as well, which was great for an 18, 19-year-old to get some free drinks at the Anderson Christmas party. It was all good fun. And it really, stood me well throughout my university career. I didn't actually think I'd go back into private client. So I joined the private client team in my gap year. I never thought that I would. I actually started looking around and applying for banking jobs, would you believe? But I suppose my heart wasn't really in it. It was something that I was nudged into by a family member. And they said, you should try a career in banking. You might make more money. But I actually, looking back on it, and so my heart was very much as a private client person. I learned a lot in that year, which said that I wanted to work with individuals, got to know their stories. I met a few clients in my first year there. I was really junior, so I didn't meet loads and loads, but I just got to understand how individuals and families worked and how people had made their money. Their clients in Manchester tended to be entrepreneurs and business owners, so they were coming from a self-made position rather than inherited wealth. And it was those stories that really, really resonated with me. And I ended up going back to then what was the Anderson UK business, but in the form of Deloitte. And a lot of the same people were there that I'd started when I was 18. So at the age of 22, I joined the Manchester private client team at Deloitte. And again, really, really fortunate that I got to work with some fantastic people, some new people as well, and qualified with my ATT and then my CTA following that. CTA was the hardest exam I've ever done. I still remember to the day right now that passing CTA and logging on to the internet with a terrible internet connection and with my friends in our flat in Manchester, being so delighted that I passed and thinking I've never had to do another exam again. I thought I'd failed it. You just never know with your CTA. I studied really hard. My mother says to me right now, that's the hardest you've ever studied, because I was a little bit lazy at school. She says to me now, she still reminds me about that. But she said, you really did work very hard for your CTA. And it's one of the biggest achievements even now, because it was such a difficult exam then. And it still is now. I know the pass rates are incredibly low. And having had CTA and the experience under my belt in Manchester at Deloitte, say working on some great entrepreneurial clients, I think that's the bit that really started me out on that entrepreneurial tax journey. Working with families, business owners who were going through management buyouts, selling to private equity. I was fortunate to do some hybrid work between corporate tax and personal tax, which I don't think I necessarily would have got in London, because you tend to go into a much more specialised world when you join a bigger firm in London. So there's just more of you, but in Manchester, it's smaller teams and you do get a variety of work. So I was very fortunate to get experience of things that I don't think I necessarily would do. So corporate tax, share schemes, tax investigations, trust work. My clients had all those facets to them, non-domicile work as well, not too much non-dom work. In Manchester, I was fortunate for a family that was non-domiciled, and I really cut my teeth at understanding non-domicile and offshore trust issues. So working on some really, really interesting clients, and some of the experience, the technical experience and the experience of working with those clients I still hold very close to me today as well. So I made some really great friends. I can't underestimate that during my time in Manchester and Deloitte. I made some of the best friends that I've ever made in my life, and I still keep in touch with them now. One of them was an usher at my wedding. I'm seeing another one of them actually this weekend for a drink. And it's great that I've still got all those memories and still got those connections from my time at Deloitte. And they have now become very senior people in their respective firms. Some have moved on, some are still at Deloitte. And it also shows the power of the network as well. That there's been occasions where we've shared work amongst each other. We're very, really good friends. We go out for drinks together and go to the horse races. But we also have the opportunity now to work on a professional level. And we sort of snigger to ourselves now that these people who are in their early 20s and going out for drinks on a Thursday night, Friday night, we're actually now pretty grown up and working on clients together. Not huge numbers, but it's fantastic that we have that opportunity as well to share work between us. And the reason I mention that is that the importance of the network. People may not know it in their formative years, but if that's something you maintain and people that you like working with and people that you can be friends with. So I was really fortunate that these people became really close friends of mine. But that actually can stand you in really good stead later on in your career. And even just having someone else to talk to, because they're probably going through similar issues at different points in your career. And say we've grown up together and they're all, say, in senior positions at their respective firms now. So for me, just have that sounding board as a friend and someone who I've grown up with is value in itself as well as say that business development opportunity where we do work with each other in a collaborative way.
Yeah, it sounds like you had a really quite unorthodox falling into tax really right at the start. Then, probably the most unorthodox I've ever heard. In fact, turning up to an interview completely unprepared and then still getting the job. It's a blessing in disguise by the sounds of it, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's maybe the gods were looking down on me that day. And I have to thank my sister. I thanked her when I got married. She was the one who sort of pushed me into the career. And it's a career that I loved. It's the profession that I love as well. I never thought I'd say that when I was sort of starting out, but I did genuinely fall into it. But I was hugely lucky. And I've been I think throughout my career, and my wife, when I tell her about sort of the career that I've had, she said, you have had some luck along the way. You do make your own luck, but I have been very, very fortunate. I think I've already said that a few times even at the start of this interview, Jack.
Yeah. So then, obviously you went to Deloitte then, and then what was your move after that then to get to where you are today?
So as I said, I had a great time at Deloitte, some of the best years of my life. And when you're growing up in the profession, you don't have the responsibility as much. My advice to everyone, we do enjoy that time. I certainly did. My friends can vouch for that. And when you progress through your career and you're thinking about your next step, and what I wanted to get out of private client in particular, and where the big firms had gone, and Deloitte was no different, that private client had become a little bit of a poor cousin at the time. It was just after the financial crisis in 2010. And I was sort of thinking, I'm a senior manager now at Deloitte. I progressed really quickly. I've been backed and the opportunity to work on some really good clients. But I felt that the time now was right for me to make that next move. And I could have gone to an EY or a PwC or a KPMG. I just felt that, especially in the Manchester market, I thought, well, am I just trading one brand for another brand? And is it going to be the same experience? Are are these firms really vested in private client? It's something that I really enjoyed and loved, but I just felt that the direction of the firms were going more towards the big corporates and the FTSE companies. And I wanted to go somewhere where private client was really front and centre. And I looked around in Manchester and had a number of interviews with firms there. I came close to joining one firm, but the recruiter that I was speaking to said to me, Nimesh, I think the firm that you're looking for is in London, and here's the website link, go and have a look. I'd never heard of this firm called Blick Rothenberg before, but I just got a really good feeling from the website. And I know that sounds really odd, but the things that I was looking for, private clients, working with entrepreneurial businesses, private businesses, that really came across on the website. The website's changed a lot since then. Our brand has actually changed a lot since then. But I went down to London. I had nothing to lose. I said that to myself, and walked into the building and met a couple of the tax partners in my first interview. And again, may sound really cliche, but I got a really good feeling and fell in love with the place straight away. And just understanding from the two tax partners that I met in my first interview, the type of work that they were doing, what they were looking for as well. They were actually looking for someone like me with my skill set, having that corporate tax and private client background. There was a gap that they were trying to fill to grow their practice. So they were sort of equally keen on me as I was on them. But I went really into that interview not thinking that I'd moved down to London. I'd never worked or lived in London my entire life. But I came away with the feeling, I really want that job. I want to work with those people. I also, sadly, I'd heard of a tax partner called David Rothenberg just through my reading of Taxation Magazine and Tax Advisor. And I knew of David in tax cases as well. And he was a bit of a celebrity and an idol for anyone in the tax profession in private client back then. So the opportunity to work with the great David Rothenberg was something that I wanted to do, and that was an opportunity given to me. David was sort of at the latter end of his career, but even just getting a few years of working with David was also an appeal. So I said to my parents at the time that I'm going to give this a go, Mum and Dad. I'm only going to do it probably for 3 to 5 years at most. And I'll probably move back up to Manchester because that's home for me. That's where my friends and family are. And I get that experience in my belt at Blick Rothenberg, and we'll head back. I'll head back up north. And here I am almost 10 years later. And I'm very pleased to be leading the firm, very privileged to be leading the firm. But at Blick Rothenberg, I got backed to another level, really. It was a smaller firm. It was 200 people at the time, one office, high focus on private client. It's always been a private client firm ever since its origins 75 years ago. And that was what a big part of the appeal was, that I was coming to a traditional private client firm where private client was very core to the entire practice. And it was a private client team, I think, of less than 10 when I joined. It's now a team of 60. So we've grown incredibly during that time, part of it through acquisition. But to be able to, what I look back on now, my time in the private client team there was that, along with one of my private client partners today and our head of private client, Caroline, is that we together really built something quite unique in the market in London. I'm not just talking about sort of the headcount that grew, but actually the types of clients that we ended up working with. We took the business together, we complement each other really well to work with a different echelon of client. Some of the numbers that we worked with before, very, very impressive clients, but we were working with bigger clients, more complex clients with international cross-border affairs. We really did step it up, but it was a lot of hard work. But it was genuinely a lot of fun as well. And doing it with someone like Caroline, who had a few years more experience than me, and I learned a lot from her in that time. We challenged each other. She challenged me, and I learned a lot through that process as well. But that healthy relationship that we both had and pushed each other, and a little bit of competition, I suppose, between us as well. But we positively grew that practice, and that's one of the proudest achievements of my career to date, of being able to build a private client business with a fellow private client partner who I have a lot of respect and time for, and he's one of our key people in the business even now today. That was a really enjoyable part of my career, and so I do look back on that being very proud of what we did and the the legacy of what we did not that long ago is still very strong and firm within the private client team at Rothenberg today.
Yeah. Well, one thing you said to me actually before we had this conversation, that you've never really kind of gone for a promotion. You never really tried to be promoted. It's kind of just happened. But you did move from like senior manager quite quickly to partner and then to CEO. So kind of what's that journey looks like? And I suppose, how have you done that without really trying to? And maybe that's just an unanswerable question, but I'm intrigued to know.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. It's a question that I've been asked by friends, family, colleagues. They tell me about your journey, Nimesh. Even at Deloitte, I never really looked for the promotion. I always said that I wanted to work hard, and I put some hours in. I know my sister and my family would say you work too many hours, Nimesh, but I enjoyed it as well. It wasn't presenteeism for me. I wanted to work hard. I probably worked too hard and not smart. I think that's something I look back on and go, I could have been more efficient, more effective, and delegated better. But when I moved to Rothenberg, and as a senior manager, I wasn't a partner when I joined. I got very quickly asked to become a partner, and I was supported and backed. I always felt I wanted to do the right thing, and that's something that has held me in good stead right throughout my career and my life. I have a sort of a barometer on, can I hold my head up high after I've finished for the day? Can I sleep at night? Have I done the right thing? Have I done the right thing by people, clients? And if I can do that, then I've achieved what I wanted to achieve that day. I'll never look for the quick fee or the quick win at the expense of someone else. And I never really asked for pay and promotions right throughout my career. But I think the senior people that I worked with actually respected that as well. I was never pushy, but I wanted to get there on my own merits and working hard, being passionate about what I did. Because I genuinely loved private client. I genuinely love tax, as sad as that may sound to friends, family, maybe not the people listening on this podcast, but you're all in the tax profession. But I think having that passion and genuinely liking what you do. And I was always told by a partner that I worked with at Deloitte to say that success and pay and promotions will come. Don't get too greedy. Money wasn't a motivator for me. Title was not a motivator for me. Even now it isn't. I can't get hung up on titles. It's about doing the right thing and doing a good job. And so just having that moral compass at the end of the day, that have I done the right thing? And can I learn as well? Can I learn from the mistakes that I made? One of the things that I even do now, but I did more so when I was practicing private client every hour of the day, was that I'd read back at every email that I'd sent on the train home and challenged myself and said, could I do that better? Could I have done that differently for this client? How have I come across in that client meeting? How have I come across in that client email? Have I given the client the advice? How would I feel if I put myself in the shoes of that client? And I then expanded that into, how would I feel if I was that person that was working with me or working for me, reporting into me, trying to just have that awareness of what other people felt about working with me, working for me. And I think just showing those good behaviors, that mindfulness, that's, again, I place a lot of great emphasis on. That's part of the success that I've had, that it's about doing the right thing. And so I don't get too concerned or too so disappointed in myself, because I always think that I've done the right thing. I've made mistakes. I've made lots of mistakes. I've made plenty of mistakes probably today. But if I learn from them and pick myself up, then I think that's the strength of character that everyone really should have. I know it can be difficult at times because we all go through difficult patches in our career and difficult weeks and months. But if we learn from those challenges, then I think, again, it can stand you in good stead. And it's, say, my constant drive for learning and being better. And I am competitive. You can ask my wife, who I play Monopoly with, or a family. I always want to win, but I want to do it the right way. And I think people have, say, recognised me in that sense for not being that pushy person and not asking for pay increases, because I always believed that promotions and pay would come in time. And there's plenty of time for that as well. And I lead a relatively humble lifestyle and don't actually need too much in my life. to keep me happy.
Yeah, I think it sounds like to me anyway, there's almost a big focus on self-improvement then all the way through, really, which has probably helped massively then, hasn't it, for you to, I suppose, improve your skills at each stage, really. Like when you're talking about reading the emails on the train on the way back to see how you can get better, almost self-reflection and trying to give yourself feedback. And I think as well, because you mentioned that you were kind of almost mentored accidentally by people early on in your career as well. I imagine they gave you a lot of good feedback as well, which helped to shape that.
Yeah, I think it was definitely informal mentoring. I've never really had a proper mentor, or I've asked for a mentor. I think I've had more informal mentoring, on the job type mentoring, and observing as well, listening. I've taken bits of different partners right throughout my career, partners that I really looked up to. Some things I wouldn't do it that way because that's not my style, but I've taken what I think are the best bits and put them into me and how I've developed myself. But then also, that self-improvement. There is a lot of what I believe you've got to do a lot of it yourself. People are here to support you and help you. And my gift to give now is certainly supporting and helping anyone who asks me in this firm about how they can progress their careers. That's my role, to further the careers of the people around me that are coming through the firm. But you also have to take ownership of your career as well. And it's not necessarily always asking for feedback, but it's looking at your appraisals or just taking that time to reflect every so often and say, well, how could I adapt and change? And I think the best form of learning, though, is just observing those around you. It may not be more senior to you, may be people who are your peers, or even some people who are junior to you. I've learned a lot from the people who have come through the door, just different ways of working, different approaches, and having that impact to people around you. That's what has certainly shaped my own personal development and the advisor and the person that I am today. And it's sort of, I know, going slightly off tangent, Jack, but it also gives me the emphasis on how important the office is as well. We've changed the way that we work over the last 2 years, but being in an office environment and observing and listening and just that diffusive impact of learning, that has been such a big part of how I've been shaped. And I hope that the office doesn't completely disappear as a concept. I think it's great that we can do some remote working, and great that we can work from home, because there are always good reasons to do that. But the office has such an important part to play in the development of the careers of junior people who are coming through, because that's been my experience. Well, I think you can only do so much through a textbook or through a video call. It's actually just watching how someone walks down the corridor, or just overhearing that conversation, whether it's on the phone or with a client or with a colleague, that you just pick up so much even without knowing it.
Yeah, I think one thing I've done a lot as well, actually, I think it's a good point to raise, is like the observing of people and almost picking up on their approach. Like every single time I've write a piece of advice and it's gone for review and there's changes, I will look at the changes and try to understand why those changes were made. Was it because I didn't explain something clearly? Was it because they were thinking about the clients and they understand things in a different way? Was it because I wasn't practical? Whatever it is, I think not just for advice, but everything, understanding why people do something different or why they've changed something, I think is like an invaluable piece of feedback that you can take and use. And then I think second to that as well, the other point I think you made, which I also really like, is almost not copying someone else, but creating your own approach based on the good things and maybe the bad things that you see from other people. I say bad in that something that you wouldn't do personally, not necessarily like an horrifically bad thing. But yeah, I think you've got to create your own self, haven't you? If you just copy someone else, you're just not going to be true to you, and you probably won't end up enjoying the work.
You've got to be your own person. That's, again, a big philosophy for me, that I am Nimesh, the tax advisor, and I don't want to copy someone else. You have genuinely got to be your own person, and probably more so in private client, I would say, because a large part of the private client job is relationships with your clients, and they're buying you. They may not, they look at Blick Rothenberg and they say, well, that's the infrastructure. We know that you can do tax work. We know that you've got computers in an office, but actually we're buying you as the person. So being yourself and being able to advise then as yourself, I think is, again, so important. And as other people work for you and you develop their careers and you manage them as well, I think they respect you more as well if you are being honest and transparent with them and not having a different face at work to who you genuinely are. You should be proud of, again, who you are in any walk of life as well. I think sometimes we're guilty of having a work persona and being slightly cagey about who we are. But for me, being a private client, again, I think that shaped me to be a lot more honest and open, because that's what our clients want as well. They want to see that sort of slight vulnerable side to you, because that's what builds that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, even when you start talking about like personal things and stuff as well, if you find that you've got a common interest with someone, I mean, great. You know, you can enjoy working with them and have the chats about those things as well. One thing you did mention actually as well, which I thought was quite interesting, was you said that kind of early on you worked too hard and not smart. I think those might have been the words that you said. And you mentioned delegation as well then. So how did you move from working too hard to working more smart?
And I'm not sure I've even cracked it now, to be honest, Jack. But I think looking back, my biggest mistake has definitely been poor delegation. I'm sure the people that have worked with me over the years will echo that as well. But in parts of my career, and even now as well, I'm guilty of being a perfectionist. I had that mentality, definitely a lot more that my way was the right way. And I spent bad time correcting, what perceived to be correcting the work of others, which wasn't wrong. It was just their way of doing it, which is probably at odds with what I just said about being yourself. But that was something I look back on and said that if I'd recognised that everyone has their own style, which it's not wrong, it's just their own style, I think would have got me, I would have worked a lot smarter and probably less hours had I not been so obsessive about doing it in my way. And I mentioned Caroline before. Caroline certainly helped me unlock some of that. She was very honest with me about just trying to overcome that sort of that perfectionist side of me. But it stemmed as well with the delegation point, because I was so obsessive about doing it my way. I wouldn't delegate very effectively. Delegation is a really tough skill. I'm still probably not great at it compared to some others. But with the delegation, you're shooting yourself in your foot, because you're not then investing in your team, because you can work all the hours you want. You could work 25 hours a day, but you're only ever going to be able to perform to your ability, up to your ability. You can't create more hours. And so you can't then scale the impact and the effectiveness of what you do. You can only ever have so many clients. So if you're going to scale your practice and business, which is what we set out to do in certainly the Blick-Rothenberg private client team, you need good people around you, but you need to invest in those people as well. And it may feel like you're spending too much time investing in the people to develop them, but in the long run, even in the medium term, it will pay so much. But I was probably a bit late to the party looking at all of that, because I was trying to do it all on my own and not investing time in people to help to get them to where they should be, so that they can work on those clients. And in a really perverse way, what has accelerated that is my promotion to becoming CEO of Blick-Rothenberg, because I had no choice but to give up a number of client relationships, because I wouldn't have had the time to do the role that I'm doing now. And it became a bit of an epiphany last year when I was transitioning out of my role in private client, and I had to give up several hundred clients, and I passed them on to different people. And that was emotionally quite tough, because I'd worked with a lot of those clients for many, many years. And the feedback that I get now from not only the people, but some of those clients as well, they're getting better service than ever, because they're being serviced by people who are hungry, who definitely have the skills, definitely have the ability to look after those clients. I was maybe spread too thinly, and very few of those clients look to me now, and they probably think Nimesh Shah, because they're getting a great service from those people. And I think if I'd forced myself to do that earlier, if I'd handed over a lot more responsibility, given more autonomy, freedom to to the people who are working with me, because maybe I was a bit overbearing, if I'm being honest. I know Caroline will certainly say that, and she'll smile at me when I do admit that. Then I think that would have, again, accelerated the development of a lot of the people that worked with me. Not that it was, I'd like to say, I'd like to think anyway, it wasn't terrible working for me, but I was certainly overbearing, and there was very, very high standards. But I'd say I don't make any excuse for high standards, because I think we're in a quality service, premium business. But I think people do need to do it in their own way as well, and that's where I fell short. And now, having been the CEO of the firm for only a little over a year, and understanding and rationalising what my role is, my role very much is looking after people and their careers and their development. I wish I'd done that sooner, but I was so focused on delivering client service, and I did it really well, but I could have done it even better. I think that's what I would have changed over the last few years. Yeah.
It's quite ironic, actually, isn't it, that the reason that you were keeping the work is because you thought you were doing it better. And then when you've spread the clients across more people and they can give them the time, that actually it's improved it. So it does go to show, doesn't it? And as you said, it's not about your way's the best way. Other people have their own styles and stuff. And actually, probably over the past 18 months, that's the thing I've found most challenging. So I've kind of transitioned into managing two people. And I can say I've probably been an overbearing manager at times as well, with the high standards, or what I think are my standards, and almost imposing it on them, making changes because it doesn't fit my style and stuff. And it's probably only about 4 months ago where I kind of realised that isn't a good thing to do. It's almost making them feel like everything they do is never going to be right, which is obviously a horrible thing to do. Amongst loads of other things as well, I'm sure. But it's so hard to give up that control element of it, I suppose, isn't it? When you're so used to doing things your way, when you are trying to do things the best, it is hard to let go, which I suppose is what makes delegation so difficult. It's handing that trust down almost, isn't it, to other people?
It is. And I think at the point of my career, and I think it sounds like you're going through this point at the moment, Jack, that when you start out in tax, you are doing a lot of it. You're putting the numbers in the tax return, you're doing the advice, you're typing the emails, maybe someone else is sending them, but you are doing a lot. You're hardwired for a long part of your early career to do a lot of that. And then suddenly you get this title of manager. And yeah, there might be some training and there might be some courses that you go on, but actually a lot of it is about you and how you adapt to it. And because you're so hardwired to just doing it all and doing it in your own way, I found it really difficult to pass, say, that work over to someone else. And when I did, I would have changed it all anyway. So I may as well have done it myself, because I was spending that time that I would do. But it wasn't, that wasn't sustainable. It took me a lot longer than what it should have done. And I look over at some very good managers and good partners that we have in Rothenburg now, and they've certainly mastered it in a much quicker way than I would have than I did, and that's great testament to them. But I think that is the delegation point is one that a lot of people do struggle with, and there's not necessarily a manual when you do make manager to be able to effectively delegate. It was one of those buzzwords that I actually sort of hated and cringed, but it really is true that effective delegation will stand you in such good stead. It's then allowing you to have sustainable growth in yourself, in your business, in the clients that you work with. And it's also freeing you up, so you're not having to work those longer hours as well. If you can get your team functioning for you in the way that it serves the client and the firm to the best of its ability, that is so powerful.
Yeah. There's almost like two parts to delegation. There's the upfront passing over of the work, if you want to call it that, and then like the review stage afterwards, because at a manager grade, you kind of have both of those, don't you? You have to have that final review of it to sign it off for someone else. But if you get that first part right and you do that well, then it makes the review process, I think, so much easier. But then I still think the hardest thing at the review stage at the moment for me personally is then resisting making changes for my own style. And, leaving it, isn't it? That's so hard to resist.
You've got to let it go. Again, Caroline tells me that even now, let those points go, Nimesh. It's not going to be the end of the world. obviously got to be technically right. We've got to manage our risk. But there are things that it's just someone else's style.
Yeah, agreed.
And the other point on effective delegation that I've learned is it's also explaining to someone about why the task is important. You can just sort of say, here's a job to do and go and do it. But spending that upfront time, just talking through what the objective is, what the client expectations might be, say if that person's not been in the client meeting with you, really trying to explain and also ask them what their view is. And I've tried over the last few years, especially now giving fee quotes and trying to get our junior managers, directors, partners who aren't as used to maybe quoting for work. We talk about, well, what do you think? I think that's such a powerful question in terms of the delegation, because people are professional. People have been doing tax maybe a number of years now, so they know a thing or two about the job. And just getting their opinion. And actually, I've learned a lot from those people. So actually, I would do it this way, Nimesh. And it also then takes them on that journey, whether it's a fee quote, whether it's an approach to a piece of work. They're bought into then we're together, we're going to do it that way. And so that's the power as well then of doing as a team. So it's not just master and slave type approach, which we don't have, but Rothenberg and many firms don't, I expect as well. But it's doing the deliverable for the client in that team ethos way.
Yeah. So what do you think? I think what's good about that, to be fair, is it's almost giving them the autonomy and the chance to make their own decisions as well a bit, and give them the confidence to do that. Because I feel like one thing to do as a manager, particularly as a leader, is to help people make their own decisions rather than make them for them.
Agreed. Yeah. And also the ability for people to make mistakes. Because that is a really good way to learn. Asking questions, making mistakes, people shouldn't feel embarrassed about either. I think maybe we are in our professional worlds. We don't like to admit that we don't know something, or we don't like to admit we've got it wrong. But that is the best way of learning. So giving the decision making, but also the freedom for someone to make a mistake. Again, that held me in such good stead when I joined Rothenberg, because as good a firm as Deloitte was, I felt quite restricted on how I was able to advise clients. So I remember having a meeting very early on in my career at Rothenberg with our head of tax and my predecessor as CEO. And he said to me, Nimesh, you need to just loosen up a bit. Don't worry about making a mistake. If you make a mistake, it's fine. We've got protocols in place, we have risk procedures. The chances of you making a mistake, and you know a thing or two about tax, so the chances of you making a mistake are pretty low. If you do make a mistake, then if you have good client relationships, then the chances of the client getting annoyed with you, they might be upset. You've explained it to them. It's humans, people make mistakes, clients make mistakes. They'll understand and will resolve it collaboratively together. If the client is really upset and we unfortunately have made an error, then we have insurance in the firm. Every professional firm has professional indemnity insurance. Now, we don't like to use it and we don't like to make mistakes, but we have all those procedures in place. But he said, the worst that can happen here is you've made a mistake and then we do have to ask our insurer, but they'll need to cover that liability. But the chances of that happening are very remote because of all the reasons that we've talked about. And also, if you loosen yourself up, it will give you the ability to have better client relationships, because a constricted, stuffy advisor that's giving lots of caveats to their clients don't like that. And when you have made a mistake, but you caveated your advice to hell, they're more likely to then get upset with you. So have the power of having good client relationships because you just loosened up a bit and you've given them advice, you've got off the fence. And that really was, again, another epiphany moment for me, that in my old firm, Deloitte, it was so much about the reputation, the risk of the firm, which is understandable. They're a big corporate firm, and reputation risk is super, super important. And it's important here at Rothenberg as well. But where we win and where our USP certainly is that we do want to get off the fence and give that advice. And I think that conversation I had with, say, my predecessor very early on in my career that was such a powerful bit of advice that I got. And so I encourage anyone now that I work with and that I mentor to say it's fine to make a few mistakes. We don't have a blame culture here. As long as you then learn from those mistakes and we talk about them, be honest with them, don't bury your head, we will develop as people and it will make us better advisors going forwards.
Yeah, that's actually an incredible piece of advice, especially to receive from someone more senior than you as well, to kind of just tell you not to worry. So yeah, I'm sure that helped you to relax anyway, and be yourself, be a bit more free, make those small mistakes here and there, and learn from it. Could you give a shout out to that person? Who was it that gave you that piece of advice?
So confusing name, but so my predecessor and former head of tax at Rothenberg was Nilesh. A very similar name to me, actually same surname, no relation. And the running joke within Rothenberg is that when I got asked by Nilesh to take on the firm, they said that no one will ever notice because we've only got one letter difference in our name.
That's incredible. What is the chances of that?
Yeah.
So kind of knowing what you know now then, after all these years you've had working in tax, if you were to talk back to your younger self and give yourself a piece of advice, what do you think that would be?
I probably stayed with a few things, Jack. I probably stayed at Deloitte a little bit longer than maybe I should have done. I was very comfortable there, so I had great friends, but there was a point in my career that I should have made a braver decision. And so just making that brave decision and doing the right thing. I always have a rule in life, which is make a decision. It's always the right one. Don't be afraid. That's the worst thing people can do. And some of the stuff that we've talked about already around investing in the people around you and the team, again, I think that's something I was negligent at doing. And I wish I could go back and certainly invest more time in the development of people who are working with me, working for me. And I think I would have been a more effective delegator as a result of that. I think those are probably the two standout points of my career that I would look back on. But I should also add that I've had a very fortunate career in my time as well, and I progressed and got promoted at various junctures. So very privileged now to be in the role that I am in now. So I've done something right, I suppose, along the way. Yeah.
Wait, was there a point then where when you look back then now, where you think that was like the sign to leave Deloitte? Was it like a specific time when really you think you should have done it then?
I don't think I'd pinpoint an exact sort of month or year, but I suppose I'd become comfortable. No one likes change, and I certainly don't like change. I don't like buying a new pair of jeans. So moving firms is a very, very brave decision, but I think you need maybe someone to tell you. I know my sister certainly told me, you're working long hours and are you feeling rewarded? Challenging me to say it's time for you to move, Nimesh. Don't get too comfortable. And I think at the point that comfort sets in, the point that you don't feel challenged anymore, the point that you also stop learning as well. I think there's maybe points there that I was doing the same thing, maybe different work and different bits of advice, but it had become very samey and I was just performing a function looking back on my career. So I think everyone should have some time to reflect because I was so busy and say working very hard and working maybe too longer hours. I didn't maybe give myself enough time to just take a rain check. It took, say, my sister to prod me and prompt me to challenge me. And I just urge everyone in their careers to just make some time, even if it's just half an hour a month or every few months, say, how do I feel? Am I being challenged? Am I learning? Am I making some mistakes? Am I being empowered by the firm that I'm at? And what do I want to do in my career? What does the next 1, 3, and 5 years look like for me? And is it time to make a change, whether that's internally or trying something different? And there's no harm in that. And I'll repeat it again, but making a decision is better than making no decision at all. And say the decision is always going to be right and don't have any regrets and don't look back.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think the only thing about the decision thing is as long as you've actually thought about it and not just made a completely rash one, as long as you've thought about it and you can justify it, then yeah, great. I think a lot of people are scared to make the wrong decision, so they don't make any decision, as you've kind of alluded to a few times. One last question for you then, Nimesh. So many listeners to the podcast are people who want to progress and develop their own tax careers and have success in it. Have you got what you would think would be your top 3 tips that you can give to people to help them to progress and improve their careers?
Yeah, but always just challenge yourself. Ask around in your firm. If you ever feel that you're maybe just feeling that little bit stale, you want to try something different. If you don't ask the question of your line manager or the partner that you're working from that you want to do, whether it's a new bit of tax work or working on a different client, that be brave and do ask that question. I think that'd be the first sort of tip that I would suggest. Use an example that I wanted to do some share schemes work just because I was interested in that. It wasn't necessarily an area that I did within the particular team that I was in, but I asked my manager and said, I'd like to just get a bit more exposed to this because I'm interested and I think it'll help some of my clients out. Again, I was fortunate to be able to do a project on that and a project on tax investigations, which I'd never done before, and just allowed me to broaden out what I was doing, because I was just intrigued. I was just naturally intrigued because, again, I'm a bit of a tax geek. So I wanted to learn about different areas of taxation, which is what pushed me there, which sort of takes me to my next sort of point as well, that what stood me in good stead, and I think this has been through accident rather than design, but I think you could design it, is being a broad advisor. We see a lot of candidates when we're recruiting that are very specialised and very niche, and that I think is fine for some people, but what I believe to make you a rounded advisor is to have that broad experience. So my tip would be, don't become maybe too specialised too soon, and do try different things out, maybe linking back to the first point that I said about trying new areas that you might be intrigued in. Because one of the strengths of the advice that I've been able to give to my clients is being able to talk them in a very rounded way about different tax matters. Again, I've been fortunate that I've had a lot of that experience in some of the areas I've talked about: M&A tax, share schemes, tax investigations, corporate taxes. I'm not an accountant or auditor, but I can work my way around a set of accounts. I can talk competently about those things. And then through learning by working with different people, I've been able to work with auditors, corporate finance firms, even externally out at Rothenberg, bankers, lawyers, just listening and observing and broadening out my own knowledge. That has really helped me. And that's made me, I think, a better advisor to my clients as well, because I feel I can talk in a very informed way about a broad range of issues. I've always had a deep specialism in personal tax, and it's the thing I enjoy a lot, and it's still something that I make a lot of my spare time to do. But the fact that a client will ask me, well, what do you think of? Now, I can give my view and an opinion, and I know when to ask, phone a friend, whether that's internally at Rothenberg or whether that's through one of my network. The ability to bring someone else in, because I know that they have the technical skill set to advise that client. But I've got the door opener for them. That again is hugely valuable to me. So that would be my second point around just becoming that broad person, because it keeps life interesting. But also it does give you a competitive advantage, I think, over many firms and many other advisors as well, who may be just a bit too narrow. And sort of the final point, which sort of links into what I said in the last one, is your network. I started this by saying I made some of the best friends of my life, who are still very good friends of mine now, in my early years at Deloitte. And the power of your network is so important. So do make some time as well internally within your firms. Also push yourself out of your comfort zone and go to that drinks event, or go and reach out to a contact that you may be working on with a client, a lawyer or a banker, and just get to know them over a coffee or a drink. You may keep in touch with them. There's got to be a human side to this. You've got to obviously like them, and you've got to have a threshold in life and professional life that would I go for a beer with that person? Yeah. Could I work with them? Yeah. I've got to like them to be able to work with them. And that makes for good client interaction as well. It's not necessarily who scratches whose back, but building that network when you're ready, and people come into this at different points in time, that network will be so helpful for you. And even just the option to be able to pick the phone up to a friend on whether again, it could be a technical matter, a legal matter, or it could just be, I've had a bad day as CEO, Nimesh, I want to go and speak to someone just to bounce something through. What would you do? I think just having someone or a group of people that you can work with and grow with in your careers is hugely important as well. And as I say, it's that opportunity then to be able to share work in the future together. But more than anything else, it's just that sounding board on areas that you may not be second nature to you, but you're able to tap into someone else's knowledge. Because in our world, even in tax, you will never know it all because tax is hugely complicated, but the world also is hugely complicated. There's a myriad of things that go on. So having that network you can call upon, do make time as well in your busy tax lives to go and develop that.
Hope you enjoyed the third episode of Tax Career Success Secrets, and looking forward to the future episodes too. The show notes for this episode are at thetaxprofessionalspodcast.com/TTPP38. The show notes will include a link to Nimesh's LinkedIn profile, a link to my free course to help you accelerate your tax career progression, and a link to other episodes of Tax Career Success Secrets. That's the one with Bill Dodwell and Peter Rainey. There are 37 previous episodes of the podcast covering a variety of topics from tips to pass the ATT, CTA exams, and how to improve your soft skills relevant to working in tax, such as writing tax advice. You can access all of these on your chosen podcast player or through the website at thetaxprofessionalspodcast.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe or sign up to email notifications to make sure you don't miss out on any future episodes. The emails will give you a brief summary of each episode, which are bi-weekly and are released on Mondays. But that's it for this episode. I hope you liked the episode and have taken away some useful points to help you to progress, develop and improve your tax career. Until next time.